Call to order the October 5th, 2020 workshop meeting for Plymouth Township Council. This time, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America
and to the
and to
republic
the republic
for
for
which
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty
justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Just a quick review, procedure-wise, for those, since we will have audience participation tonight. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's an icon that says Participants, and if you click on that, you'll see on the right-hand side the full list of participants, and there is a raise hand feature. So when we do allow for public comment, you'll need to press that raise hand button, and that will indicate to us that you do have a question or a comment. I'll try to take those in the order in which they show up, but sometimes that's a little bit hard to tell. So I will just ask that, that everybody please be patient. If I don't go quite the exact order, first come, first serve, I will try my best to do that. And a reminder, when you do have a comment or a question, we do ask that you please state your full name and your address for the record, particularly since we know that some usernames on here might not necessarily match up exactly to your real name. So in the Zoom world that we live in, that's what we have to go by. So the first item on the agenda tonight, and just to kind of clarify, normally we have presentations in these items, and we figured that tonight we would revisit two of the issues that we've been working on, share some more information from council, and allow the opportunity for some public comment. None of these items, the campus renovation project, nor the proposed group home ordinance, none of these are being voted on in any capacity tonight, but they are items that are on here for discussion. So to begin with, the township building campus renovation. What we want to do is just provide a brief overview of where we're at right now, sort of how we got here, and then allow for any members of council to share any thoughts first, and then allow any comments or questions from the general public. So I'm going to ask if, as I'm speaking here, I guess to Karen Weiss or any other fellow members of council, if I misspeak or say anything that's not quite correct, please feel free to correct me. I'm used to correcting other people all day, so I wouldn't mind being corrected once in a while. And we also have a couple of our members from our architectural firm, KCBA, and are there representatives from Bittenbender Construction on here tonight too, or just KCBA?
I don't see Bittenbender, but I do see Nick from Snyder Hoffman.
Gotcha, thank you.
Part of the team.
Appreciate it. So our discussion in terms of the campus, the township campus, probably began at least 4 or 5 years ago. Certainly been discussed as long as I've been on council. And this is one of the issues that's tough because this is part of our township infrastructure. It's something that we don't really have a choice. We have to address. The question is, of course, in front of us right now, to what extent do we want to address the concerns that we currently have? Back in the spring of 2018, we began to really take the next step in this process and looked very carefully at the current conditions of our township building, in addition to the issue of whether or not a sale of our public sewer system could potentially be a way to finance the renovations. We had 4 more or less town hall meetings held at 2 different locations, the community center and the Plymouth Fire Company. Held those in the afternoon and in the evening, and got very good turnout, and got actually a lot of really good helpful feedback at those meetings. And I think the general consensus from our feedback from the public and from what we learned from council at the time is that everyone really did understand the need for renovation in the building, and we began to move forward with our possible plans for renovating the township building. We've actually been working with our architectural firm. We had interviews with multiple architectural firms. We've actually now worked with 2 different construction management teams, and we've come up with sort of a variety of possibilities for how we could address the issues in the township building. One of the things that is pretty evident in front of us is that there are dire needs for things that probably need to be done a few years ago, not a few years in the future. And certainly with much of the systems and the operating of the building, we've talked about things such as our HVAC system, our boiler, the roof. There's space issues in the codes department, some things with our public works facility that need to be addressed. And in those presentations that we gave back in 2018, we did show a lot of images and addressed a lot of those concerns. As we've kind of moved on and moved forward from where we're at in that phase, all of our department heads, township officials have had the opportunities to meet with our architects and our construction firm and sort of identify the needs and really lay out, kind of what has to be done, what could be done, and maybe what some would like to be done. And in general, where we're at right now is trying to figure out, to what extent we want to go forward and how deep into this renovation we want to go right now. About a year ago, again, with a lot of public feedback and comments, both at township meetings, as well as feedback that we got, via email and from various contacts, there did seem to be a general consensus from most of what we heard back that there was not a desire to sell our sewer system. In that process, we also looked at the comparative, what would it potentially lead to if we sold the sewer system in terms of rates compared to where they're at right now and where they're at in the future. Certainly had an opportunity to look at other municipalities that sold their sewer systems as precedent for really what would look at a pretty significant sewer rate increase over time. And we did determine that we could probably lessen the financial burden on residents of the township if we did not sell the sewer system and kept that as an asset. So we made that decision collectively about a year ago to not sell the system. And of course, that does lead us to the issue of, in a multi-million-dollar renovation and the need to finance that project, which, now we have to come up with an idea for how to do that. So what we're looking at is probably a couple of different options in the township building, potentially ranging from the low end in, I would say, roughly give a ballpark, like $8 to $12 million range in terms of really assessing the needs that really have to be done, up to a potentially over $20 million renovation, which would kind of give us, I think, definitely a building that we can grow into and really not have any issues with for the next 30 or 40 years. But we have to decide on needs versus wants, what works best right now, and what we're financially most comfortable with at this moment right now. As a council, we would like to try to make that decision probably at some point this month, and be able to move forward as we again have our architects and our consultants and our construction people already working for us. And of course, we'd like that to coincide with our budget meetings, which will be occurring in October and November, so that we can try to plan our renovation plan and our financing plan collectively at the same time before the end of this year. We kind of see, and I'll sort of close with this before I'll hand it over to anybody else. For years, this building has gotten old, and it is the operations center really for the township. We hear these stories about a roof being built on top of a roof, a boiler that could go and we can't get parts for, a heating and air conditioning system that is both inefficient and environmentally unfriendly. We have opportunities here to make this building more green. We have the opportunity to make this building work and function. And we're getting dangerously close to winters where the building can't operate because we can't fix what we have right now. So, when we don't address needs for a long time, we tend to have a whole bunch of us all in front of us at once. And right now we have a lot of issues with this building in front of us all at one time. You compare it to other things in the township where, we have our roads and our township roads where we have this constant maintenance cycle every year where we pave and repave certain roads and make it so that we never have to do, all these major projects at one time. We have a sewer system that, as we now continue to own. constant maintenance so that we don't have, multi-million-dollar projects in front of us at one time. Our parks, things that we have to constantly keep maintained. We have a community center, which is, really on this list too, coming up soon, about a building. We need to make sure that that building does not all of a sudden become outdated and need, significant upgrades and repair. We just replaced the roof on that in this past year. So these are all things that are great for the township, but they're things that require maintenance. And we're at a point now where this township building probably just has had too many major projects put off for too long, and we have to do things this year. We have no choice. It would be irresponsible for us not to. And collectively as a council, we have to decide exactly how much debt service we're willing to take on and what our final budget is going to be in order to spend for this project. So that's my long introduction, my long-winded narrative there. And I will, at this time, I guess, just hand it over to anybody else on council who would like to add anything or maybe clarify anything, certainly, or Karen or Rick or anybody, or John or anybody who wants to chime into anything I just said.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
I don't think a week goes by without us getting a letter or an email or some kind of a congratulations to our police for their great work, our public works department. Yet at the same time, we've kind of allowed their working conditions to deteriorate significantly. And I don't think it's fair to our employees anymore to have them continue to work in substandard conditions. There's an old saying about kicking the can down the road. Well, I think the road's ended and the can is disintegrated, and it's time to do something now. I guess my biggest regret when I was chairman on council was not being able to get us to this point, and hopefully we'll make a good decision for everyone in the near future, because even if we make the decision now, the building won't be finished for a couple of years, and hopefully, our fingers crossed, we can maintain things up until then. But I think we need to do something. We need to do it now, and it's the only fair thing for our employees who work hard every day in right now substandard conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Any other members of council like to add anything?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Gatt.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say I appreciate the detail that you gave in your opening remarks there. I think you covered all the highlights that we've been talking about for years. And I just wanted to echo that we need to make a decision soon. There's two critical areas that they need answers on to move forward. And if we don't decide on some things this month, this pushes this project back. And speaking with our township employees, a lot of decisions were made in regards to expectations, I guess, that we are going to move forward in the very near future. With that being said, you can't keep putting this off month to month. I just wanted to stress that I think we need to move on this as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Bandish.
I would just like to say that I was not part of the planning process for this, but I totally agree with what's been said. We need to move forward. I heard horrible stories about space heaters having to be purchased and used because the heating system had broken down. So I think we need to commit to a good plan, but I would like to keep in mind our commitment to reduce our expenditure of fossil fuels, and to keep in mind, even with the horrors that COVID-19 has wreaked on our economy, and I know the challenges that lay in the year to come, that we keep that in mind as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to offer something. I agree with everything that has been said so far. I think it's, almost a shame that something wasn't done earlier. To have asbestos in a building for this long to have people without air conditioning and without heat during the hottest and coldest days, to have employees working in storage closets that have been converted into small offices is just wrong. And as you said earlier, our employees get shout outs from the community all the time. And to try to nickel and dime them with their health and with the maintenance of our equipment just isn't right. We're a township with historically low taxes. We are a township that supplies trash and recycling and branch pickup, where neighboring townships charge extra fees for third-party contractors to perform those duties. So I think we owe it to the employees and to the township residents, who are the beneficiaries of our employees' dedication, to get this building basically up to code. I mean, I don't know what would happen if we had a rough winter and that boiler went. Where would our employees go? We cannot risk their health any longer. And I think it's really a shame that it's been left this long. I applaud you, Mr. Chairman, and I applaud you, Mr. Higgins, for getting this before the community, for allowing the residents to decide whether they wanted to sell our sewer system and risk what some outside company could do in rates, or to take on the debt ourselves. And we are fortunate that borrowing rates are low right now, to do what absolutely has to be done to bring this building up to standard and make it a place where I know our employees enjoy coming to work. I know they enjoy doing the work they do, but they deserve comfort and convenience while they do it, and not be subject to the conditions they have been. So thank you for your introduction, and I am in favor of moving ahead with renovating this building. Thank you.
Anybody else from council or any of our staff want to add anything before I give some semi-closing comments and turn it over for comments or questions from the public?
I could just add, I know Rick will agree, we cannot afford to not fix some of the things around here. We just have to do some minimal things. You mentioned most of them. I find it very upsetting. The building isn't really ADA compliant, and that upsets me, as well as, like you mentioned, the asbestos, the heating, the cooling, the constant maintenance. So some things have to be done. Can't afford not to.
Yeah, I think that just in some of my final thoughts here, I think that is ultimately the question we have in front of us is, you know, at this time, it's not a question of whether to renovate or whether not to renovate. It's just a question of how much to renovate, and knowing that, you know, at the very least, we're looking at a multi-million-dollar, you know, potentially, like I said, probably $8, $10, $12 million minimum. And I don't know that anyone on council has necessarily made a definitive decision yet, but, you know, as we all sort of project future planning and you know, when's the best time to do things, you know, do we want to bite everything off right now and try to do everything today? Or do we want to do what needs to be done today and then, you know, potentially, you know, wait until maybe there's another time to do the rest of it. So I think that's the ultimate decision we're going to have to make, you know, here in the next week or so. So if there's no other comments from council or staff, I will open it up for public comments and questions. And again, you just use the raise hand feature. I will call on you and ask that you give your full name and address to start. And again, I'll try to do that in the best order possible. And we do have our some of our consultants here with us tonight. So if there's some technical questions that need to be answered, hopefully they can help out with And in addition, Len will unmute you to permit you to speak, and then we're going to ask that you, when you're done, let me make sure everyone is muted when they're done so that there's no background noise for future speakers. So the floor is open. Okay, first question or first comment is Bill Sabey. You can unmute Bill.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to council and staff. I'm on the Environmental Board Chair. I live at 113 Ashley Way, Plymouth Meeting. Part of the Environmental Board's responsibility as a volunteer citizen board is to advise the township on environmental concerns and provide input where we can. We have a lot of our members are very interested in helping the township have a better place to live and exist. So our concerns are really to look for what's best for us going forward in the future. And also as initiators of the Ready for 100 Renewable Energy Resolution in April of 2019, which you've adopted, the township made a commitment to achieve clean renewable electricity by 2035 and all energy by 2050. So in our mind, it doesn't seem reasonable to have natural gas as a choice. And we would prefer that council reconsider a further evaluation of geothermal and water source heat pumps as the first choice. If we look at the bigger picture, I agree with you. You need a building, you need to move pretty quickly on it. I just think when you're spending this much money for a building that's going to last more than 50 years, as the current one has lasted, it's important that we get the right decision on that key element, because that's going to contribute to the comfort and the health of the staff, as well as if we have fossil fuel emissions, because we're burning natural gas, we're going to be affecting the health and welfare of our surrounding residents. So it's very critical that we look at a renewable energy progression for the township. The thing about staying on electricity, and the whole idea for the future is to electrify everything, is that it's going to be easier to clean the electricity grid, and to do that through additional wind and solar resources. As the cost of those keep reducing over the technology improvements, and offshore wind is going to be starting to come up off the Jersey shore, we'll see that the reduction of the grid dirtiness or brown electricity is going to be much more cleaner. So by picking a energy source that will be on electricity for the future, the township will then inherit the benefits of that renewable electricity as it is added to the grid during the next 15 to 30 years. So the real key point here is that we really don't want to invest in any more additional natural gas infrastructure. The shame would be that we implement something like that, when 2050 comes around, we have to throw it away and put in, a cleaner resource. The other risk, fiduciary risk that the township is facing, is that it is likely that the cost of natural gas and fossil fuels will have to go up, because as the United States federal government finally gets its act together to help us combat climate change, carbon fees are going to have to be implemented on fossil fuel driven energy. Currently, there's a couple bills in the federal level starting from $15 a metric ton for carbon fee to $35 to $40 of carbon cost. So this is really a fiscal choice for the township to make sure we don't get into a situation where we end up having to pay higher utility bills in the future. The likelihood that the cost of solar and wind will help keep the cost of electricity much lower. It's really going to benefit the township because we'll get lower and lower energy costs. Also, if we can leave the roof open for solar in the future, when the cost of solar gets to the point where we can justify putting a solar array on it, we can offset a lot of our electricity costs for that. So when you look at the bigger picture, you know, the impact of climate change on the United States, we all are well aware of the wildfires in the West and the increasing intensity of storms and rain events. And you can see how that's damaging many of our residents' homes with flooding and roof leaks, et cetera. So I just encourage council to really take a hard look at this. I provided some input today via email through Karen for you to take a look at with some research information, you know, that we've been able to pull together. I've talked to a lot of geothermal and water source heat pump experts over the last 3 weeks. And I have a few more that I'm going to be calling in the next week. And they all say that we can do this and that geothermal or water source will be a more effective solution for the township. So thank you for your time. That's our input from the environmental viewpoint.
Thank you, Bill. And I also want to acknowledge Bill for all the work he does on the EAB. We have a lot of citizen boards that you know, do everything from Parks and Rec to civil service to the environment and everything in between. And Bill is one of the most passionate of our volunteers and citizen board members that we have. So I think our EAB is in very good hands and certainly advises council very thoroughly all the time. So thank you, Bill, and thanks for sending that information to us today as well.
Thank you, Chris.
I think Andy Katronik is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So yeah, Andy Katronik, 332 Weymouth Road. Also on the Plymouth DAB. So just on the comments there that Bill was making, just hate to see us get tied to natural gas here for the next 30 years, as well as risking being able to meet those 2050 goals of 100% renewable heating as well as electricity at that time point. One thing in watching the replay, so I wasn't able to make the workshop when they presented the overview of the building design. But in watching it, I thought that the cost analysis seemed a little bit lacking. I was wondering if we could see some more detailed life cycle costing analysis, including the replacement of parts as they fail, and trying to put them on an equal time frame. Noticed that there was some difference in the life expectancy of some of the different parts, as well as I wasn't sure if the initial cost of the ground source heat pump was being greatly weighted by the initial drilling, at which time when it was replaced, you wouldn't have to consider that for a second time, I believe, until a much longer time period than the 20 or 30 year lifespan. I'd like to see some more work done there on the life cycle analysis. Cost analysis, I think, would be highly beneficiary. As well as Bill mentioned the one thing about the carbon tax, potentially including that in there. I don't think it'll be a huge difference, but could be cost additional thousands of dollars, I think, per year. And just to let you know, one thing, I'm actually a federal contractor. I work for a federal contractor, and I've worked very large programs. I've worked very small programs or smaller programs in the tens of thousands, or tens of millions for the program overall. And they're very highly technical programs. So this certainly could be seen as something different. You're talking about building, having a building design. But in our work as a federal contractor, I can't think of an example where we don't have our government representatives, and then they have a technical advisor sitting by their side as well. So the parallel here would be, yes, you have your contractor, but also having another technical independent reviewer who you put on contract when you're spending tens of millions of dollars would seem prudent, especially for any highly technical aspects of the building. And really in today's world, buildings are getting much more technical, so it shouldn't be seen too much as just brick and mortar, but there's a lot of technical aspects to energy efficiency and energy design and so forth with the HVAC, as well as actually, all the aspects of the building with lighting and so forth. So, considering an outside independent third-party evaluation would also, I think, be prudent. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
I would just like to add, if I may, Mr. Chair, about Andy. I serve as the liaison to the Environmental Advisory Board. I share your kudos to Bill Saby. Andy is a little bit modest. He's not just a contractor, he's also an engineer who specializes in this field. So, I always enjoy hearing Andy's expert opinion in these areas. Thank you, Andy.
If I could ask really quick for any of our experts here from KCBA, or if anybody could just speak to the comparisons between the various, whether it be geothermal or the other forms, just in terms of what the process was in terms of gathering the data to compare those. I think we had 3 or 4 different options. Again, maybe not a ton of detail, but just a little bit of an overview of how we got to those comparisons.
Sure. This is Nicholas Keynes from Snyder Hoffman Associates. I performed the calculations and economic analysis. So what we did was we started with the existing building, looked at the bills. We created a model of the building, and then we modified that model to address the proposed changes, the addition, the changes to the envelope, and then we inputted into that model the various systems that we compared. The systems being, VAV with electric heating, VAV with hot water heating using natural gas, and then we also did ground source heat pump, we did water source heat pump, and air source heat pump. Then we used the ASHRAE degree day method as kind of a comparison to make sure that what we're getting out of the software makes sense. At this point, this building's not built. We need to make assumptions, so we want to make sure that the assumptions that we've made are accurate. We then pulled all that information together into just a simple payback. We used some estimates, in terms of what we're anticipating the usage is going to be, or the maintenance is going to be on the equipment based on the kind of equipment. If you have a boiler, you're going to need to do chemical treatment. That's going to cost you more money than if you don't have a boiler, for instance. Kind of weighing those things, considering those things. The air source heat pump tends to be very hard on compressors. They run really hard when it's super cold out. Again, there's extra costs associated with that in terms of maintenance. So we kind of tried to weigh all these various things when we came up with the analysis. In terms of energy rates, their energy rates today, I used what the township is currently paying for electricity, and I used what I've been seeing for utility rates from the gas company. So in a fairly quick nutshell, that was our process.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Next hand I see is Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie Livesey. My address is 15 Skip Road, Plymouth Meeting. And I too am on the Environmental Advisory Board with Bill and Andrew. I echo Karen's comment. I respect Andrew's analysis, and he is very credible. So I do look forward to hearing his comments in a lot of different ways, but this especially. I only want to just say that, I was part of the Ready for 100 group when Plymouth signed that commitment 18 months ago. And I just want to just hope that the board keeps it top of mind, that that's the goal, to keep renewable energy as the focus. And 2035 is not so far away anymore. So, you know, the building is going to last a very long time. And this is a major, major investment. So I just wanted to just echo that and just keep it top of mind when there's buildings being built, especially this size. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all wish we could just fast forward to 2035 right
Yeah.
now.
Well, at least out of 2020 would be nice at this point, right?
Thank you for those
Right.
comments. Appreciate it.
Agreed.
Other questions or comments regarding the township building? Mr. Gibbons.
Hello, everyone. Mr. Chairman, thank you for taking my comment. I would just like to say,
I'm sorry, can you just throw in your address, please, real quick?
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Benjamin Gibbons, 3018 Sheffield Drive.
Okay.
I would just like to say that I, like everyone else on this call, echo the sentiments that our township employees make sure that we take care of them. But I think at the same time here, we cannot risk the financial stability of this township. And we need to make sure that what we do is in line with our financial goals as well as our commitment to our township employees. And so I would just like to encourage, first of all, I have some questions. You know, I would like to know when you say on the low end here, $8 to $12 million, I would like to see some clarification as far as what does $8 to $12 million get us? What does that ensure? Does that meet all of our goals for taking care of our township employees? Does it bring, you know, how far along in that plan does it get us? And if you could provide some clarification around that, that would be great. And then I watched would
you like an answer to that question first before the next one? Or
yeah, sure. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
if
we can take it one by one.
Sure. I'm going to ask Karen Weiss if you could just help me with this one a little bit. So, because we did talk about this, and that low end, which really is, I mean, kind of our must-haves. If you can just sort of, I guess, reiterate what that includes, and then what that sort of $20 million price tag would add onto that.
Okay, so the master plan that was done, it had three options. There was a fourth option, was a brand new building, which since new construction costs more than renovation, that was kind of quickly dismissed. So there were three options left. Around, you know, I think a couple of years ago, the cost of $8 million would have taken care of the HVAC system, the electrical system, the roof. I'm trying to think what else it may have taken care of. So the very bare minimum must-haves. It didn't do anything for any department other than those major things. Around 10 to 12 million was the medium build, and that included a smaller addition for the code enforcement department. That was the original need. We literally have 4 people working in 2 former storage closets that didn't even have heat or air, and we had to get them ducted so they would have at least heat and air. And there may have been some additional things with that. You know, the master plan, I do believe, is still up on the township website. So, and if it's not, we can put it there, Ben, so you can see. And then the full build out, the 22 million that we're talking about, that really takes this building forward for the next 40 years, 50 years. It includes improvements for the police department. It includes a much larger addition for the code department. It includes a little expansion behind the auditorium for meeting spaces for the youth groups that come in at night. So we don't have to heat or air condition a big auditorium for, you know, a baseball meeting or a soccer meeting. Out back, it included improvements, a total renovation of the Public Works building, an additional pole barn to keep vehicles and equipment out of the elements. It included secure fencing for the police vehicles and personal vehicles of the officers, renovations to the locker rooms. You know, I mean, every department shares in what would probably look like a brand new building in the full build out. In fact, the pictures they showed us, it does look like a different building. But that's, you know, the largest price tag takes you, 40 years in the future. And like I said, the asbestos removal would be in the basic must-haves as well. And then we could add LED lighting to the building because we haven't converted that yet. We know we would save more money if we did, but it didn't make sense if things are going to start getting pulled apart. So, but that's the addition. The 10 to 12 is a very small addition for the one department only.
Yeah,
May I just ask Karen a quick question? BJ, before you.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Hate to interrupt you. Where does the ADA compliance come in? At what level?
Well, so the
The
building
20 million or the 12 or what?
well, I would have to go back and look to see where that is. I mean, it's basically, Karen, right now, better front doors to this building that actually, open every time you push the button. They were retrofitted, but I don't think they work properly. I don't think that the ramp is all that compliant, and the handicap parking is nowhere near the front door. It's the best we could make it. But in a future build out, we have handicap parking right at the front door like you would see in any other new public building.
Thank you. Sorry, B.
Yeah, I just don't think that the level of clarity is there yet, because I watched the presentation and they presented the $22.3 million build out there, and I saw a lot of bells and whistles that we probably don't need. And some of the concerns I had there were the additional conference rooms in the back of the auditorium. First of all, I didn't even know there were restrooms back there. That's amazing. That it's kind of the dark cave that it is now, right? Nobody ever goes back there. So that was one thing that I was kind of concerned about. Another thing were the new canine kennels. Like I get the idea of relocating them, and I guess it's also better for the canines to not be near the noisy trucks. I get that, but I also go back to what the chief said in his presentations when he took over, that we'll be reducing the amount of dogs that we actually have. So, the cost benefit of if we're going to go from, I think we have 3 or 4 right now, right, Chief? And we're going to go down to eventually 1 or 2 over attrition, I guess, when they retire. So that, to me, that was a question. Do we want to relocate the entire kennel compound for what will only be maybe 1 or 2 dogs in the future? So that was kind of the thing there. And then, obviously the Public Works garage, I would like to see some cost benefit analysis over, comparing us to a township or a government entity, as far as one that does currently garage all their equipment and their replacement schedules compared to us who does not currently garage all of our equipment. Are we replacing equipment faster? I mean, I know that's the consensus, and that's what KCBA presented to us in the last meeting, but I didn't see any data to support that. And just like we talked about some of the environmental issues, maybe going back and seeing some data on that would be a good thing. I mean, I don't think anyone is objecting or has any concerns over replacing the roof and the boiler and the heater and all, but some of these other bells and whistles we may or may not need, I think should warrant some more data mining and analysis to other similar entities. And so that would be some of the things there. And then for the whole heat pump and environmental thing there, I think we need to be very conscious of this. I think natural gas is a fine source of use. I think that's overall consensus of society would be. I was very concerned with the exorbitant costs of the option that you're being pressured by the EAB here. And I just
If
want
I could just jump in real quick. We're not being pressured by the EAB. The EAB advises us, and we've now analyzed all of them. So there's no pressure. I don't think anyone on that EAB would say they're pressuring us.
The strong, I will rephrase that to say I'm just really concerned about the strong advisement you're getting from the EAB there. I heard a great recommendation of a nice compromise system that was, I think, option B or 2B during that meeting from the township engineer. That seemed reasonable. It wasn't the cheapest. It wasn't the highest fossil fuel usage. I certainly appreciate being more environmentally friendly, but at the same time, we also have to keep all of our residents in mind and the financial future of this, of the township here. And so I would just be concerned with some of those points that were raised and the strong advisement that you're receiving from the EAB on the more expensive option for that. So more data I would like to see on that as well. So they're just kind of some of my concerns here. And if we could get some more information about those small and medium builds there, I think that the public deserves that time to comment or to move forward with the absolute necessary. And then step 2 would be to, address some of those. So at least you could get, your important, there's a lot of lead time ordering for boilers and whatever heating system you pick and, the roofing materials. So you have to do something. You have to do it, like you said, within I think you just said at some point this month. So that would be next Monday is the only time you guys vote, right? So that would be within a week. You want to vote on this?
Actually, and I think Karen, you can jump in. We actually could vote at budget meetings, correct? Too, is that?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so time is of the essence here, and I would just like to urge some immediate action on those immediate items, especially those things along lead time for ordering. We need to get our employees heat and air conditioning and all that good stuff and the new roof. But then I would also like to urge some caution on some of the more expensive items or some of the items that we could phase in over time or do ourselves outside of the scope of a mega project. I don't think there's anything wrong with the $22 million scope, the dream, the vision, but I just want to urge, how do we get there? And I don't think you need to do it all at once. So that would be a phased approach for me, and that's what I would like to make that public comment towards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
BJ, I have a question for you about these small meeting rooms. Would you be in favor of having these community groups find another place so we don't build them small meeting rooms, and so we do not have to continue to pay to heat, air condition, and light a big auditorium for a group of, I don't know, maybe 12, 15 people who are meeting?
Yeah, I would be totally in favor of that. I actually attend a lot of those meetings, and I think the community center conference room would be a great place to host it. And I know that the group that I attend, I often urge to use our parks when it is. There's no reason why we can't go on a beautiful night in the summer and meet over at a pavilion or a park at one of our great township parks. We don't need to be there every day or every month. So I would urge other community groups to do the same or to take advantage of the beautiful GPCC smaller conference rooms as well.
And those are by rentals, right? I mean, you have to rent the GPCC rooms. They're not free.
Well, since the township owns the GPCC, maybe if we were going to change our policy on that, we would make an alteration of the rental fees for that as well. There's also places like Mission Barbecue, IKEA, Whole Foods as well, all offer free community rooms that can be used by local groups as well. So yes, I don't think we need to air and heat a ginormous auditorium for groups to meet when there are plenty of creative options out there.
Thank you for those other suggestions. Some of the businesses that also offer meeting rooms for community groups. I appreciate that.
Andy, I see I'm not sure if your hand was re-raised, Andy Kutronik, or if it was still up from the first time.
Yes, thank you again. Yeah, Andy Gatronic. No, re-raising my hand to provide a little bit of clarification. One, thank you for the accolades to those couple who stated that for me. For everyone's understanding, I do have a master's of science in sustainable engineering. My focus, though, again, to be humble here, Karen, sorry, was that it was in, renewable energy. So I do have some background, a little bit of studying on buildings and HVAC, but not as much as solar and wind power and so forth. And I do think I forgot to mention when I was speaking before, I think we completely agree with, giving our township employees the best facilities, and it's not our intention to hold that up or to cripple their work environment in any way. We can be on board with that. And to speak to Benjamin's comments there, the financial projections that we saw in last month's meeting, I think were just a little bit out of whack with what we've seen, out of line with some of the other projections that we've seen out of other buildings, similar buildings that were done, and I believe that were sent to the council here today, of one example. So we just want to make sure we have the right financial projection data, that we're really looking at the total life cycle cost. Understand that there may be some increased upfront costs, but lower life cycle costs is where we expect to make some of that up and actually come out even or ahead, would be the hope. But again, that's why we're asking for the further analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sadie.
Just want to mention, Chris, that we also engaged, so Andy is part of the Masters of Sustainable Engineering from Villanova. We engaged the Villanova couple teams to help us plan for Plymouth's renewable energy future in the fall of last year and the spring of this year. If Elizabeth Larson was willing to make a couple comments, because she was part of the building audit for the community center, I'd invite her to, raise her hand, but I think she's a little shy because she's not, a resident. So if you're willing to allow her to make a couple comments.
So that's fine with me, if she wants to.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Larson. I am a Master's of Sustainable Engineering student at Villanova University. And as Bill said, for the last year, we've been working with him and the EAB to look at Plymouth Township's transition to renewable energy. Through this, we've done quite a few different things. As you mentioned, we've looked and done a virtual energy audit for the Plymouth Community Center. And we really see, based on looking at your energy bills and looking at, projections for climate science and future projections for, movements within the government, I guess, federal government. We see that going renewable and going to renewable energy is really going to be beneficial for many reasons. As Bill has already said, the benefit to human health is extremely important. Greenhouse gases are continuing to increase, and it will generally or continue to affect people more and more. We are not seeing a stop in that, and it's just going to continue to increase. And we think that switching to a renewable energy system now, rather than waiting a little bit and then doing it, will be critical in moving us forward. We are already pushing past a point where we are possibly hitting a no return zone. So if we are able to stop now, take action, there's a greater chance that we'll be able to correct the things that we're seeing. So I think taking action, or at least thinking about it and stopping and looking at renewable energy systems, is important now, we can't start at 2050. We need to start now. So that's something that I would lift up to you guys and would hope that you would consider as we go forward. Bill, I don't know if there's anything else in the analyses that we've done that you would like me to mention. That's what I can think of offhand.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions regarding the township building renovation? Anybody else from council or staff
Yeah.
have anything?
Mr. Monero, yes. I looked at all these options, and quite frankly, there's two things that stick out to me that are listed as disadvantages. There's like 5 of them, but the thing that sticks out to me is one says does not pay back before equipment needs to be replaced. And the one that really concerns me is service is more complex, requiring professional service technicians more often than other systems. So doesn't pay back, and are we going to have a technician out here every other week to work on a system, and how much is that going to cost? I still haven't made up my mind, but I'm concerned about those disadvantages.
Anybody else, council?
Well, I would just like to say that I think improving our ADA access is crucial, and may even be mandatory with as large a renovation as we're undertaking. I would leave that to our solicitor as to whether or not we could get away without doing that. And I would also like to say that new lockers for the police, I think, are probably essential as well. Those lockers were designed at a time when our police did not have the type of equipment they do now, the bulletproof vest and all of the pounds and pounds of equipment they must carry. And not to mention the mold that's currently in those locker rooms. So I think a locker room that meets the needs of our police, not a Taj Mahal for them, just basic needs. Also, LED lighting, to me, is essential. Traditional lighting just eats up too much cost and energy. So I just think a lot of the things that we're looking at and the space for the code department. I mean, to have our code workers, our code employees in closets is just, I just can't fathom that that's how they're working. I mean, these are the people who go out and examine our buildings and new construction to make sure that they comply, to make sure that the proper permits are being given and that complaints are being answered. And these are important employees for us. And I don't think that need is going to change. It's not just all new buildings and new development. It's the existing buildings. It's the rentals that have to keep up to code. And all of these are done by our code employees. They do a great job. And to be sitting in a closet really is wrong. I mean, those closets are probably needed for storage. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
May I make a quick comment?
Sure.
I agree with Karen. I have a cousin who came to see me sworn in last January, and she has multiple sclerosis, and she had a very difficult time getting into the building. So I speak from experience there. And I've always been told if you touch something, then you have to come up to code. So I would imagine that we would be subject to the same rules and regulations. In addition, I agree with Karen when she was talking about the police lockers. And I'd also like to point out that hopefully we'll be hiring more female police officers and workers, so that that has to be taken into consideration too, because the original planning for the building probably did not anticipate a large number needed for just that. And the last thing is that the secure fencing for the police vehicles, I think is an important point to think of too. They're coming and going at all different times of the day, and we do need to keep that in mind. That kind of secure fencing should not be jettisoned. And also, if we buy HVAC and we buy a roof that's designed for a smaller building, when we do have the need to expand, won't that incur additional cost in having to jettison or amend existing systems and having to add to it? We, in 1971, when this building was designed, people have said, why are we anticipating having more employees? We know that in 1971, we did not anticipate having an IT department, and there are other things that are just going to grow in size. We have to plan for the future. Thank you.
All right. Anything else from council? I see one hand raised. I think it's Gail Momgen.
Hi, thank you very much. I was attending for the later discussion, but I just thought of this. My company has gone all remote with the time of COVID, and we recently announced that we will not, most of us will not be returning to the office. So I just wondered if consideration had been given that, are we going to really need all this office space? Will many more employees be working remotely than were in the past?
Gail, that's actually a great point, and something I've been thinking about the last couple of days coming to this meeting. But you know, if anybody else wants to add to this, they can feel free to chime in. But I think because of the operations that we run out of the township building, I think we're more likely to still need those people on site. And actually, many of our township building employees have been working in the office throughout the summer and throughout the pandemic, particularly when it comes to things like code enforcement. A lot of times we still have, you know, many of our residents still come into the township building to make payments. Certainly the police department, the public works, they do have to be on site. So I don't anticipate there being a huge reduction in the number of on-site employees that we're going to need to have, just because of the types of operations that we run out of that township building. But it is a very good point.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Chris, Jim Wallace, just to let council know, 20% of your budget right now would have to be spent on ADA.
Gotcha. Thank you, Jim. You would know. You're the expert on we have to hold ourselves to the same standards that we would hold any other buildings in the township. And I think that's important to recognize that.
Well, that's a state regulation under the UCC, and the only way you can get by it is go to Harrisburg and get a waiver.
Thank you. Any other additional comments from council or staff before we move on? And you know, we have 3 more meetings in October. We obviously have our regular meeting next Monday, and we have 3 budget meetings, or we have 2 budget meetings. I'll announce those in a little bit, but on the 19th and the 26th. So I will ask for council that we definitely hold ourselves, you know, at the very latest, that we not allow a decision on this to go past October. The 26th being our last meeting in October, and then coinciding, again, our last budget meeting is November 16th. So I think that we need to, again, the planning for the building and the planning for the 2021 budget should really be occurring at the same time. So the next item for public comment tonight would be our proposed group home ordinance. So again, I'll try to provide an introduction with some brevity, but as a lot of people in classrooms across Plymouth White High School know, brevity is not my strength. So last month we discussed extensively this proposed group home ordinance. And again, just to reiterate, the process where we were at last month was just a first reading. And I want to thank the many residents who spoke at the meeting last month, in addition to those who have reached out to us, several emails with really very good questions. I mean, in many cases, residents covering a lot of different aspects and having questions in a lot of different areas. So we did decide at the meeting last month that we would not schedule a hearing for the group home ordinance for this month, and we would allow some time to continue the discussion and look at maybe some options that we could look at in terms of potentially different forms of that ordinance to bring before its next reading. So a couple points of clarity. Again, for those who maybe did not hear this last month or are not completely familiar. So currently in Plymouth Township, a group home, a home for an assisted living type of home or a sober living home currently is permitted anywhere in any zone in Plymouth Township. We do have a handful of group homes throughout the township and have had, throughout its past. And I think Ms. Bramblett mentioned last month how the home that she lives in on Butler Pike at one time was a group home. So they do currently exist, and in its current setting, they could exist in any of our residential zones. The reason why we visited this ordinance at this time is there are parts of our ordinance that are not in compliance with federal law. And in particular, we're looking at things like the Fair Housing Act, which is from, get my dates right here, 1968, I believe, is an extension of the Civil Rights Act of 1965, as well as the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. So we are, particularly with some of our definitions, we are out of compliance with them. And it's important to note that we are not permitted to ban these types of communal living environments altogether in our township. If we were to do that, that would be a direct violation of the Fair Housing Act. So in trying to revise and clean up this ordinance, we had to tackle a couple different issues, one being that our definitions of communal living and group homes needed to be updated, and the other being, what can we do to make sure that any of these homes that would now come into the township are in, in capacities where they could fit, and particularly looking at issues such as parking, and what meshes well with the residential neighborhoods that we have. To clarify, there are currently no applications for any group homes. We have not been approached by any, and this is simply a matter of revising this ordinance to get ahead of any potential lawsuits or legal action that could be taken if we are in violation of federal law. So that's essentially where we're at. So some of the issues that were brought up last month were a lot of concerns from residents in the AA residential district that we were being too narrow in our focus of where we'd allow these, and that simply allowing them only in AA was potentially singling out the AA area when perhaps it's possible that many of these homes where they currently are in other districts do not need to be set aside for just the AA. I think we heard from a couple different perspectives, some being that our ordinance that we proposed was too rigid and would make it too difficult for group homes to operate, and then others with the concern that it was too lenient and would make it too easy for group homes to operate. So somewhere we have to find a way that we are in compliance with federal law, that we are allowing these homes potentially where legally they're allowed to be, but also providing some safeguards for residents, particularly in terms of issues like parking, so there's no adverse effects to the neighborhoods. Another sort of, I guess key component or something to consider as we do this is the issue of oversight of these facilities. And I won't talk too much, but if it comes up, we do have some information tonight to share on what some of the oversight is and inspections and regulation from the state in terms of how these facilities are monitored and operated. So I'll wait till that comes up before I jump right into that. But so again, we wanted to give an opportunity tonight, I think, for any additional questions to be answered, for more input to be given as we look for a way that we can write this ordinance, which we feel as though best serves the residents, best complies with our legal obligations, and is something that we can feel comfortable with as it's ready to be presented. So again, I would stress that we're not voting on this tonight. We really don't have a completely revised version of it tonight. I think we're still gathering input and feedback in terms of what some of the concerns are that residents have in the way that it's written, and potential questions they have as we look to move forward. So yeah. try with brevity there, but I did want to raise some of those key points and make sure that everyone's clear on where we're at and why we've come to this point to begin with. So again, before I hand it over for any public comments or questions, I would like to give the opportunity for any members of council or any of our staff to make any additional comments.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that I certainly benefited from the input from a lot of our residents the last time that we discussed this and opened it up, and certainly opened up my eyes a lot to, really how welcoming our residents are for these group homes to be in our area. And I think personally, from everything that I heard, I don't know that restricting it to one residential district, the AA, is necessary. I think there are affordable residences existing in other areas of our township. They're operating as group homes. I don't believe there have been any complaints from neighbors. There is oversight, as you mentioned, with licensing, so that the group homes are professionally operated with some state oversight. So I do appreciate what everybody said, and also the parking, that it may be, we certainly don't want in areas where there is no off-street parking, there's going to have to be some on-site. In areas where there is on-street parking, perhaps some sort of limitation that can't have a lot of cars taking away the parking spaces for residents, especially on the weekends, hopefully going forward, when they can have their big barbecues and birthday parties in their own yards. So thank you, everybody. And my feeling is that restricting it to the AA after listening to everybody probably is not necessary in Plymouth Township.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment?
Yes.
I too was very grateful for the input from our residents, and they certainly helped prompt my thinking. I hadn't realized that by restricting to AA, we might be making it more difficult to have more affordable type of housing also occur. So we certainly didn't want to limit our welcoming of this type of housing. So I appreciate that very much. And also that it would be very good to keep in mind using other areas as well, so that public transportation would be more easily accessible, and that we would have to have less dependence upon the need for additional parking spaces. Because you're right, Karen, going forward, we're going to have this COVID-19 is going to be in our rear view mirror in a year. So we're going to stay positive that way. But I too am of the opinion that limiting it to just the AA's doesn't really make the best sense.
Anybody else from council or staff? So as I open it up to questions or comments from the audience, again, just a reminder, full name and address, and you can use that raise hand feature. I'll try to keep in order as much as possible. And I will say from the outset, I think all of us in council want to try to answer your questions as best as we can. We may rely heavily on our solicitor because he is the legal mind. Fun fact, I took the LSATs in my senior year of college, but I got a teaching job instead. So any legal expertise, we may need to revert to our solicitor here. And if we can't get you information tonight, if we can't give you a good answer tonight, we're certainly more than happy to go back and get that information for you later. So again, if there's any public comments or questions, now would be the time to raise your hand. And reminder that we want to make sure that your hand raise comes down and your microphone comes off when you're complete. Okay, Gail, you're up.
Hi, Gail Momgen, 2609 Narcissa Road. I'm kind of hoping someone else was going to go first, but I figured I would. And Chris, I was late in the game. I did send you an email with a couple of my concerns, and I'm glad, thank you very much, Kathy and Karen, for raising the concerns with placing this or limiting this to the AA residential. And I just wanted to express, I did research in my own very limited, very unprofessional way, and found a couple other townships that had encountered some issues with group homes and really spent some time to craft ordinances that were very specialized and worked with what their own township needed. I looked at Falls Township, Bristol Township. West Norriton has a very detailed ordinance that addresses a lot of concerns that I had, like who's overseeing this? What are the limits? How many residents are appropriate? Can the sewer system or the water supply handle these residents? Specifically, that the group home should not change the character of the area where it's located. So just a lot of specific details that I think would be very helpful as Plymouth considers how to move forward with this issue.
Thank you. Ken. Looking for Ken. Len, do we have him unmuted or is that on his end?
I asked him to unmute and he's not unmuting.
Gotcha. Oh, there we go. Ken. Ken, last chance here. The floor is yours. Well, we can move on if anybody else has a question, and Ken, we can come back to Ken if there's a technical glitch that he's trying to work out.
Or maybe Ken is the name of the computer and there's someone else in the household using a computer that belongs to Ken. Okay.
Joan.
Wait a
Joan,
second.
doctor?
Yep.
Thank
Hello.
you. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good.
So Joan Doctor, 107 Pine Tree Lane. And I just want to raise the issue about the AA. And I've heard from comments earlier just now that it hasn't been an issue for the township. I certainly know that we need to be welcoming and allow this type of housing. Being in real estate, I kind of know that. And I just think that limiting it to AA would just limit the ability for this housing to come into our township, because there isn't as much I think I'm right about this, AA in Plymouth Township as there is other zoning. And so it would limit it only to a few neighborhoods, which would then potentially have it be, have more than one home in a certain neighborhood. So rather than spreading it out, you're kind of bringing it all together. And I think that the parking, even if you have acre lots, the parking is the parking, and it would still take off street parking. And it's not that we have a whole lot more parking than other areas. We do have somewhat more. So it seems to me that I believe that we haven't had issues, so why not keep it the way it is? Fix your zoning so that it's legal, and then move on. But just because you need to do that doesn't mean you need to change the philosophy of where you allow group homes. Just my opinion.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
There, any other comments or questions from the public? Going once. Going twice. And anything else from council? Oh, see, last minute here, last call. Jeff Pastizzi.
Hi, Chris. Sorry about that.
Almost missed you, Jeff.
You know, had to get one in. Just a quick question, I guess, on process.
Sorry, Jeff, address, please. I'm sorry.
Sure. 101 Woodland Lane, Plymouth meeting. So having heard all the concerns from the last meeting and having heard some similar concerns about just changing the AA designation, what's the process going forward here? Is there going to be a revisiting of or revisions to the proposed amendment as a next step? Is the plan to take this to a full vote? Could you enlighten us in the next step process?
Sure, and if I ask, I might ask Karen Weiss to just double check and help me out here. So I believe that we had the first reading last month, and I think we are looking to revise the version that we read last month. So I guess the next step would be to have a second reading of the revised, or would it be a first reading of the revised?
Could be a second reading of the ordinance, but it would be a revised. It sounds like to me, maybe council would like to take the AA designation out, and if you allow it everywhere as it is today, that's a simple revision to the ordinance. Since it's a zoning ordinance, it will require a hearing, a double advertisement and a hearing before council can vote on it. So if you direct the solicitor to revise the ordinance, once that's done, then the next step would be to choose a date for the hearing and advertise it, and and then hold the hearing and then vote. So I think the next step really is, if council is in favor, to ask the solicitor to revise the ordinance. That is the next step.
And is there a 30-day period of notice for the hearing, or is there not a minimum?
It should go back to the Montgomery County Planning Commission, so it would be at least 30 days away from the day you choose. Whenever you want the hearing to be, it has to be at least 30 days in advance. So it goes to the county planning, and they have a chance to comment. I think that would be a significant enough change to warrant another letter from them.
And Karen just hit on what is the important part. If it's minor technical changes, if it's you're putting a comma here, you're changing a word there, that doesn't need to go back to the Planning Commission. But significant, substantial changes need to go back and be re-reviewed.
Yeah. Jeff, does that answer your question?
It does in part. I guess the question I have is, Chris, are you planning to recommend a change to the board?
A change from what we proposed last month?
Correct.
Yes, I am. And
Okay.
I have to get the sentiment of the rest of council. I'm just one.
Is that something that's voted at the next hearing, that change? Or
So,
is that done pre?
Yeah, so right now there's no, we could direct the solicitor to revise the ordinance, but there's no there's not a formal vote at this point. There really won't be a formal vote until after the hearing. Is that correct, Karen?
Well, yeah, but you need for the actual ordinance to go into effect, but
Yeah, I'm going upstairs. Can you shut that down?
You do need to ask the solicitor, if it's your will, to revise the ordinance. And you could do that this week now, you could do it next Monday, you could, you could wait another month, but that's up to you. Whenever you make that decision, we'll have to send it back to Montgomery County Planning Commission, and it has to be, like I said, at least 30 days away from the day they need 30 days for review. The hearing would be sometime after that, and it would require a double advertisement. And then you would hold the hearing, So if you directed the solicitor to do that tonight, you may get that in November, but definitely by December. If you don't, you're probably looking at next year.
So,
Or you
so
could
for
make
this-
that at one of the budget meetings, although you don't typically put too many other things on budget meetings.
Right.
You could.
So for the sake of getting the township compliant as soon as possible, could I ask Chris if you would make that proposal tonight?
Yeah, I that was sort of going to be my closing recommendation.
I don't want to steal your thunder at the end.
No, that would be our next step. I don't think we want to leave tonight with without that clear, definitive next step.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else to add? Anybody from council want to add to that? Because I would, and I think based on the numerous feedback that we have gotten, based on our opportunities to sort of address a lot of these issues, I think that the intent of the ordinance would not change drastically if we eliminated the restriction to just AA. And I guess I would ask for the rest of council to see if we want to direct our solicitor to revise the proposed ordinance to remove the AA. I got not remove the AA, but remove AA as being the only allowable area of zoning. Did that make sense the way I said it?
Yeah, do you want to make that motion?
Yes, I would like to make that motion.
Mr. Monero, just to clarify, you want to allow these uses in all residential districts?
Correct.
Okay.
And just so if anybody has any questions, just to kind of reiterate from what I said at the beginning, right now, they are allowed in all residential districts. The proposed ordinance would have allowed them in only the AA residential districts. And if we revise that proposed ordinance, we would simply go back to allowing them in all residential districts with the other stipulations specified in the ordinance concerning parking. And also the ordinance includes updated definitions of communal living and a few other things.
Do you have a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Is that a motion from Mr. Gannon?
I thought you made the motion,
No, I
but I
did
can
make the
second it.
motion. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Gannon. Are there any additional comments or questions from council?
I not to be that person, but I am. Are we going to reconsider the parking restrictions, which a few residents had raised as also being discriminatory or trying to keep people out? I just don't know what council's feeling is on that. None of the residents spoke to that tonight. I don't know if they're on again tonight.
Maybe a point of order, Mr. Chairman, that the motion was strictly on removing the restriction. We can talk about that after the motion, I would assume, but
Okay.
unless you want to include that in the motion.
Am I in any kind of procedural violation if we discuss the parking?
Well, you have a motion and a second, so actually it's the correct timing for council's comments,
Okay.
like Karen.
Yeah, and I guess to Karen's comment, I mean, I think the issue here is we're trying to make an ordinance that would apply to any of these communal living facilities. And I think we have to plan for possibly the, I guess we need to be conservative in our parking philosophy here and saying what is the most that we might possibly see. And I think that the parking stipulations, serve a purpose to make sure that that any of these homes with multiple vehicles are not become a burden for the neighborhoods. And I don't believe that our parking restrictions as listed are too restrictive. And I believe from what Mr. Clark said last month that we are within legal rights to have parking restrictions. If a group home came in and felt that there was a hardship or felt that there was a need for an exception to the parking restriction, they could apply for that exception, correct? As a zoning application?
A variance,
A
yes.
variance, right. So that,
Okay.
that variance process would still exist if they could prove a hardship. But I think if we want to try to plan for all possible scenarios, I do believe that the parking specifications are important.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
For existing homes, would they be grandfathered in, so to speak, so that they don't have to worry about these particular parking restrictions?
Yes.
Correct. Any other questions or comments from council? And are there any additional comments or questions from the audience? Okay, so the motion is to revise the proposed ordinance to eliminate the restriction to just AA, and then move our ordinance process back to Montgomery County for further review, correct? Again, we're not passing the ordinance at this point. We are simply giving the go-ahead to revise the ordinance. See, I talked long enough, and now Ken is able to get back in. So, Ken, are you there? Ken, any luck? Ken, if you're having trouble getting in, I would recommend that you just, if you have a question or comment, please feel free to email us, and we'll answer it for you and try to have an answer for you before our next meeting. Any other comments or questions from the audience? Okay, so again, what we are voting on here is simply for permission to revise the ordinance, send back to the county, correct?
Yes.
Correct, okay. Mr. Gannon?
In favor.
Ms. Bramblett?
In favor.
Ms. Bandish?
In favor.
Mr. Higgins?
In favor.
And the chair votes in favor. Moving down, there will be a swearing-in ceremony on October 12th for Harmonville Fire Police Anthony Dinolfi. And there will be an executive session being held after tonight's workshop meeting. Okay, going down to administration. We are going down to budget meeting announcements. And we have just an announcement that our budget meetings will be the 19th to 20 and the 26th of October, the 16th of November. All those are at 6 p.m. I can announce those next week again, if that's okay with everybody. All right, the pension fund allocation.
This is a routine pension matter we handle every year. We get state aid from the Commonwealth, and we need to divide that state aid between the civilian plan and the police plan. We received state aid of $792,737.15. And based on the unit value, which is a value that's assigned to each employee, the actuary in his letter dated September 29th is recommending that state aid be divided as follows: $413,601.99 to the police pension plan, and $379,135.16 to the civilian plan. And council would have to approve that distribution of the state aid.
Any questions for Tim? Is there a volunteer to read this next week?
I'll read it.
And there's two, there's the allocation and then the pension fund resolution.
Another routine annual pension matter. Council has to set by resolution the contribution of the police officers towards their pension plan. In the resolution, that the contribution is set at 3%. This is based on a collective bargaining agreement where the officers would contribute that much towards their pension, and council would have to pass a resolution approving that 3% contribution by the police.
Okay. Dave, do you want to take that one too, since those two are
Sure.
related? Any questions from council on that? Next item is the AFSCME retiree healthcare payment.
Yes, we have an AFSCME retiree spouse who continues to pay monthly for her Aetna Medicare Advantage. It's been set at $500 for the past several years. As you can see, I did put in the memo, the rates have gone down for 2021, but I just need to know what council would like to continue to charge the one retiree spouse who remains on the plan.
And we've been charging 500, is that?
We have, yes.
And I guess the recommendation or the question will be to continue to do the same for 2021, correct? Is there anybody in council that has a question about that or?
No, I think we do it. We've always done it. We do it again.
And I know she's very grateful.
Good. I'm okay with that as well. All right. And that's not anything we don't have to vote on. Do we have to vote on that next week, or is that just a procedural matter?
But all of council's in favor of that? Karen, Kathy, Dave?
Yes.
I heard
Yes.
two, so three. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll come off the agenda.
All right, Tim, my favorite part, going back to last March, is the financial update.
Yeah, I've been trying to give council an update each month of the coronavirus effect on township finances. I started off with about a 4-page memo. It was a lot of background statistics. I give you graphs. This month, I've kind of condensed it. I think we all understand the issues now. So I'm going to give you a summary. It's in condensed form. Nothing much has changed. You know, we're monitoring the finances, we're monitoring the taxes and expenditures, but there really hasn't been a lot of change. In the second paragraph of my memo, as you've seen before, we're predicting for year ended 2020 a general fund deficit somewhere in the range of $750,000 to $1 million. That's generally the number you've been seeing. Nothing's changed lately. We still haven't seen any of the third quarter or fourth quarter earned income tax or the local services tax. So we'll continue to monitor the number. But right now, based on the information I have, I think just to give you a number, that's the deficit we probably are projecting for 2020. And in the third paragraph, there's another range, which again, we're going to talk again about at the budget meetings for 2021. We expect to see a significant drop off in business privilege tax. So for the year 2021, we're looking at a budget deficit possibly somewhere in the range of $1.5 million to $2 million. And again, when we sit down at the first budget meeting, I hope to have better numbers on that, and you'll have the whole picture of the 2021 budget. But I'm just want to give you a heads up based on what will be probably a significant decrease in business privilege tax. I think that's what we're kind of going to be looking at when we sit down and go over the 2021 budget. So pretty much in the next three, I'm giving you updated cash balance. We have 13.3 million. At the bottom of our cash cycle next March, we'll still have 7 million at the bottom of the cycle. I mean, that's a significant amount of money. After that 7 million, the balance will head back up again until the following year. And to go out a little further, March 31st, 2022, at the bottom of the next cash cycle, we'll still anticipate having $5 million cash balance in the general fund. So that just kind of gives you an overview of where we stand. And again, we'll flesh this out during the budget meetings. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but.
Tim, if I could just ask you to just clarify a couple things. So initially, when we passed last year's budget, our initial budget for this year was going to be a $700,000 surplus. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
So essentially, we've gone from budgeting for a $700,000 surplus to potentially $1 million deficit, obviously because of the pandemic, correct?
Correct. There's been pretty severe financial effects, and yes, it has swung it from a surplus to a deficit for the year 2020.
And if you could just, again, just because I know we have several people in the audience, just for clarity, could you explain to everybody the cash cycle and in terms of like defining the bottom of the cycle as opposed to the the high end of the cycle per year and what that means?
I say in the memo, the bottom of the cycle is in March, and after we hit the bottom in April, the real estate tax money comes in, the business privilege money comes in, the LST money comes in. So after the bottom of the cycle in March of 2021, that $7 million bottom is going to probably shoot up somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 million. So our revenues are very cyclical. After April, they will go down until the following March. In the bottom of the cash cycle, you never want to get to zero, obviously. There are a lot of places who do operate very close to zero at the bottom of their cycle, or they have to take out tax anticipation notes to get them to April. So I think this is really good news from the township standpoint. Even at the worst, even at the bottom of the cash cycle, we still have significant amount of cash to weather whatever kind of harmful financial effects are coming from the pandemic.
And I don't know if you have this number. This will be the last question. I think we talked about this at a previous meeting, but if you have the number in front of you, when we sort of hit that crash in 2008, which was sort of our most recent really low point, do you have what our bottom cash cycle amount was at that time?
Back in recession of 8, 9, and 10, I think we hit a bottom of about $3 million. $3 million cash in the general fund until the economy took off again, and then our revenues shot up pretty significantly.
Okay.
Back in that period, the bottom we hit was about $3 million.
Thank you. Just for comparative sake there, I thought. And I also want to, I think it's mentioned in here, but part of this is a big hit that unfortunately we've taken at the community center, which has been difficult, but as I'm hearing, people are starting to come back slowly, but that certainly has been an area where we've seen the impact and the comfort level of people going to gyms and classes and renting space and things. So to clarify, so we've had to take money out of the general fund to supplement the community center fund because of their losses. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. And in a normal, sorry, last question. And in a normal year, the community center is, what is it, 89% self-funded or something around there?
They generally cover 80 to 90% of their revenues. So every year, the general fund does make a contribution to the community center. But this year, in addition to that normal contribution, we will have to subsidize any loss due to this pandemic that the community center has suffered to their revenues.
Thanks. And I want to thank Karen Frank and Karen's assistant Phil Brady for they're doing as much as they can at the community center and really trying to share with everybody how safe it is and everything, the precautions they have taken, and really trying to get that facility back up and running to close to normal time. So I thank them for all their extra hard work and certainly weathering this storm as well with the rest of us. Any other questions from council for Tim? All right, thank you, Tim. Next item is a business tax litigation update.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to provide an update on 2 cases that you authorized our office to file business privilege litigation against back in August.
Alex, can I just ask you real quick, is this something that is okay to discuss now, or does this have to be discussed in executive?
We're okay to discuss it now. I was just going to let you know that both companies now paid.
Oh, thank you.
So Tim let me know that after we sent some threatening letters and had some correspondence, both companies have now paid. So those matters are resolved and the township is made whole. And the taxes that were owed from 2014 through 2018 have been collected.
Thank you. Were they, I'm sorry, just to clarify, were they from the outside firm that we brought in or was that from one of our internal audits?
They were from audits that we picked ourselves based on a review of tax returns. Those two audits were ones we did internally, and it wasn't part of the outside auditing firm.
Thank you.
And Chris, Mr. Chairman, just so you know, one amount was roughly $502,000, and the other amount was roughly $8,100. So they were large dollar figures.
Thank you. All right. Anything else for administration?
No.
Okay, moving on to police and public safety. Chief.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With Detective Sergeant Tom Longo's retirement, impending retirement this month, I'd like to ask council if they would authorize for me to give a test for a probationary patrolman. We currently still have a list which expires in about 6 weeks. The top 3 or the next 3 applicants do not have any experience or Act 120 certification, and there are no academies that are available until next year. So the list will expire before we go into the new year. Also, with all the changes that we made, the progressive changes we made to the civil service ordinance, I'd like to take advantage of that and look to diversify the department. So I ask if we could to authorize a test, and then I would ask civil service then to nullify the current list so that we can move on.
Any questions from council on that? All right. Is that something, that's not I guess that's not a formal vote, but that's a yes, a go ahead. I would be in favor of that, of the go ahead there to authorize the test.
Yes, here.
In favor here.
In favor here.
Okay, great. That'll come off the agenda, but thank you.
And Chief, that was the last time we gave that test was when we had over 500 applicants. Is that correct?
Yes, over 600.
And one of the changes that we had made was not requiring that police academy completion at the time of the application, but we could hire somebody and then they would have to go to the academy. But what's happening here is if we did that now, the academy would not be until next year, and that person we hired would actually be expired off the list. And that's really why we have to renew the test, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Just wanted to clarify that for my own personal knowledge. Any other questions for the chief on the test?
No.
Anything else? Oh, is that a question? Chief, anything else for police public safety?
No, just to remind you though that Detective Sergeant Longo's final day of working is this Friday, October 9th. And traditionally we do what's called a last ride when the police officer finishes his full career. So everyone's invited to see him off. I know a lot of us are working, but I just wanted to let you know that we'll pick him up at 8:30 and celebrating his last day of work. So I just wanted to pass that on to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Moving down to public works and sewer, addendum to the recycling contract.
Yeah, I could tell you, if you remember last month, the Recycling Consortium, of which Plymouth is a part, had a 6-month extension from Mascaro for accepting our recyclables. And actually, shortly thereafter came what's the circulation in your book now, which is for another 6 months. So it's just another resolution to pass and or an addendum to last month's. But you can see the other 6 townships that are involved, and they were able to get a full year. So we have time to work on another bid and continue to take our recyclables where we've been taking them and having Mascara or some other company pick them up for us.
So this would extend the contract to April 2021?
Actually, it goes to October of 2021.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that's all pandemic related? That's the reason for the extension?
Yes, yes.
Got it. All right. Does that require a formal vote?
Yeah, I will leave this on for next week.
Yep.
Just to let you know, instead of 6 months, it's actually going to be a full 12 months.
Gotcha. All right. So, somebody want to read that for next month?
I can take it.
Next week, yeah, thank you.
Next week. Did I say next month? I meant next week.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Next item under Public Works is a streetlight request for Weymouth Road.
Yes, we recently had a request for a street light on the block right off of Oxford on Weymouth, where there's a dark spot, and residents feel like the kids tend to congregate in that area, and they petitioned the residents within 300 feet of the street light, and all residents signed. I can't really speak on there's some factors that are involved. One is the crime in the neighborhood. I really can't speak on that. It was just they filled out the request form, and everyone was in favor. There is a gap in lighting on that block, so it is somewhat dark relative to the rest of the neighborhood.
And then you have the cost there in the memo, right?
Yeah, so
590.
Yeah, it was $590 for the labor, the tap, and the LED light. And I anticipate the electric to be about $120 a year annually. It's about $10 a month to light it with an LED. So all said, the initial outlay would be $590 and another $120. So it'd be about a $710 expense.
First year only, yeah.
First year, correct.
And
moving forward, it's another $120 a year.
From a lighting perspective, you would confirm that there is a dark spot there, and there is not as dark as where you're sitting at right now.
I know.
I just went out on you.
But from a lighting standpoint, you would agree that would be justified need there.
Yes, there definitely is a gap. There's a street pole on every corner, and there's one on Oxford, and missing on that first block, there's not a street light. There is a pole, but not a street light.
Okay, interesting. Any other questions from council on that? And Chris, just to clarify, the new LED lights, I mean, that's sort of what we're doing is as we add a light or replace a light, we're replacing them with the new bulbs. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, when the ballast goes or the head goes of the high pressure sodium bulbs, we are fitting them out with all LED. We've been doing about anywhere between 50 to 100 a year.
All right. Does anybody from council have any opposition to the addition of that street light?
No opposition.
No.
None here.
So we'll keep that on for next week.
Yes, and get somebody to.
I'll read that.
Okay, Marty.
Chris, anything else for Public Works?
Nothing more, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving down to engineering. Mr. Manai.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to report that we have quite a few jobs going on in Plymouth Township right now. We have the Beanbo Bakery being under construction on Ridge Pike. We have the Colonial Middle School. We have the Driscoll Tract. Also some work being done at 137 Plymouth Road. In addition, we have some pre-construction meetings scheduled for later this month or early next month. So we're seeing a lot of activity right now in the township as far as construction. If you have any questions about the jobs, I would be more than happy to answer them. Any council members?
If I could just, only because I've been seeing a few questions. I think people are now seeing what's been in the works for a long time with the Driscoll Tract. as particularly along Plymouth Road, it's becoming a little bit more visible. Can you just give us just a brief overview again of exactly, what we're looking at, number of homes and how long that project has been in the works for?
Well, that project has been in the works for a couple of years. That particular section just started recently, maybe a couple of weeks ago. The activities that they're doing there right now are basically the installation of erosion and sedimentation control measures on that tract. They're clearing the vegetation that has to be removed for the creation of the houses. I forget the number. I think there's 47. Karen might correct me, but I think
79 altogether.
up top.
Well,
Yeah,
altogether,
in
both sides
phase
of the Pico
Yeah.
corridor, and it's about even. Forget exactly, but
Right.
it's pretty similar both sides
And
of it.
the approvals for that project go back to probably what, 2014, earlier than that, 2015?
I can look it up. It's been several years.
Yeah, the zoning of that tract probably is like 5 years ago, maybe was approved, and the construction started after that sometime.
Gotcha. Any other questions for Lonnie? Clarifications? All right. Anything else, Lonnie? Is that it?
That's good.
All right. Thank you.
Get a new GM maybe next year.
Not maybe, definitely. Going down to subdivision and land development for projects that are currently under review.
There's nothing needed for any of those.
Okay. Dave Gannon, that's a big relief for you. Nothing to read there.
Well, the next one's his.
I'm used to it. Sorry.
All right, so the conditionally approved projects that are not yet recorded, an extension request for Fairfield Road to May 7th.
I'll take it.
That is Dave. Anything else to add here under subdivision land development that is not listed?
No.
Going down to code enforcement, Mr. Wallace.
I have nothing.
All right. Any questions for Jim from anybody? All right. And zoning hearings for this month. Anybody want to? Does anybody have any questions, or are there any concerns with any of these?
I don't know if anybody has concern about the one on Township Line Road.
Treasure sign.
405 square feet seems awfully large.
It's huge.
Yeah, Township Line Road has been, traditionally, the signs they've gone with most monument signs and nothing in them. I don't think anything that large.
Yeah, that was going to be my comments. 3 times the allowable size. I mean, it seems excessive.
Is there an image of that in our packet here?
That may, I will send that around to council because honestly, it's one of the ones that came in last month. There were about 8 applications, and due to the timing, because you have to hold the hearing within 60 days, but Dave was able to hold that one over and the Harmonville because they both came in earlier because they just had to spread them out between the 2 months, and he was able to do that timing wise. So I will get that. It probably was in last month's packet, and I will send that to you and see what you think. You could vote next week if you felt like if you wanted to send the solicitor to that. It just seems like a lot of signage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on here from anybody? All right. Volunteer to read these next week?
I'll take it.
Was that Kathy? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Parks and Rec. Mr. Frank. Anything tonight? did we lose Karen?
Am I here?
Oh,
Yes,
there you are.
there you are.
Karen,
Okay.
anything to add tonight?
Sorry. No, I don't have anything for this evening. But as you did say, we are trying to get ourselves going back in the correct direction. We have put out in October, if you will, like a mini brochure, and are getting some positive results from that. And we are working on a November, December one that will go out. Also probably by the middle of this month for it. So working our way there little by little.
Thank you.
And I say the emails are effective too. I get them.
Good, thank you. Yes, we've been trying to do almost everything virtually, like not virtually, but online. We do have, for those that come in, we also do have printed brochures that are also out. Just if you come pick them up at the community center.
I have a question, Karen. This is Karen.
Yes.
As the weather gets colder and COVID's supposed to surge again, I'm currently taking a class outdoors. What do you anticipate for the classes meeting outdoors? I mean, maybe November will make it, but I don't think December. You'd have to work pretty hard to stay warm.
I think you would have to work pretty hard to stay warm. You know, at that point, we are hoping that we could still do our social distancing and then move them inside. You know, there would be no way that we would have as many as we did before. But we're trying, like with the senior classes, we have them spread out about 10 feet apart. So we're using the large gymnasium and doing that so that we can put them 10 feet apart, but still have less people in class. So that's just what we're trying to do, is go with our small class amounts and put them in areas that are large enough that people feel comfortable.
So those classes that pre-COVID you were able to host where, you know, anybody could come and just, and they were crowded too, the workouts. What's going to happen with them? Are you limiting class size in those?
Yes, all the class sizes are basically limited at this point. The daytime senior fitness classes are back. They are under demand, but they are, you know, again, limited. We have about 15 to 18 people in those, and everybody has, if you will, a square in the gymnasium, that each square of where they are is about that's about 10 feet apart. We mark the floors with gym tape. So we're just trying to use the different rooms and different spaces according to how many people that we would be able to take.
So you're requiring that people pre-register for those? You can't just show up as you wish?
It depends which classes. For some of them, we are requiring pre-registration, and then we're moving to first come, first served. It's different. I think with the class that you're taking, it's a little different because you would have to pay for it in advance. It's different than a free class. So each of them are kind of a little bit different. The kids' activities we're looking at also for when, based on what the school district might be doing and kind of what that would be doing.
And how popular has your program been for the children who need to come to the community center for doing their Zoom meetings with their teachers?
It's limited. It's not as popular as we thought it would be. However, with a lot of issues with each grade being kind of having different timelines, it's become very difficult for us to do so. So I believe that program will be coming to an end at the 16th when they're changing their school system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else under Parks and Rec?
No, I don't believe so.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Under planning and development, kind of going back to sort of this renovation, township building mechanical and exterior walls decision.
So, well, I guess just wondering, I don't know, after tonight's discussion, if there's anything that you're ready to vote on tonight, or if I could leave this on for next week, or if you want to give us some indication when if you want to do it at one of the budget meetings on the 19th or 26th, when should it come back on the agenda? These two decisions, well, the mechanical would be for any, the small, medium, or the full build out. That decision, you know, would be helpful this fastest we could get it. The exterior wall decision, it really only needs to be made if you're planning on the full build out. If not, then, you know, you wouldn't need to make that decision. But these are, you know, I put it here so that if you were ready to make a decision next week, you could make it tonight or next week. But based on tonight, I'm not sure where you are.
My preference, well, obviously for the mechanical part especially, but my preference would be to make the whole decision together. So whether, you know, one of those meetings this month, I would rather sort of do it all collectively. I don't know how the rest of council feels.
I think that's fine.
Just to give us a sort of a full cost all at once.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, should I leave it on for next week, or should I put it on for the 19th or the 26th, or do you want to see it at a different time? I mean, I just need to put it on some agenda.
I think my preference would be the 19th.
Okay.
That gives us a little bit more time to evaluate, and then maybe the 19th could be kind of our final discussion, and maybe we could try to tie ourselves into a decision on the 26th. If that timetable works for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Would we want,
Yeah, that's fine.
Dave?
I'm fine. My comment would be for this particular issue, as well as, I guess, other ones, would we invite KCBA to the 19th meeting and maybe put it first on the agenda or wherever, so that they can participate if we have any questions?
Karen?
Karen, I'll put them wherever you want me to put them.
I mean, I think it would be good. I think it would make sense, because I don't want us to make a decision and then have, like, say we can't because we need to go back and get more information.
More
Like,
questions, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Stacy's still here, and I think Eric is. Are you available, Stacy, on the 19th of October? She can unmute. I'll talk to them tomorrow. Oh, there you are, Stacy. Looks like you're.
Yes, I'm available on the 19th.
Okay, great. Okay, that'll be 6 o'clock, that meeting. So thank you.
Okay.
And we'll put you first.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Anything else under planning development?
No.
Miscellaneous and old business, we have a citizens board vacancy announcement. That's the Eternal Property Maintenance Code Appeals Board. Anybody want to read that?
I'll do that.
All right. Anything else miscellaneous or additional from council? If not, we'll adjourn and move to executive session. If everyone's okay with that.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.